Hello everyone and welcome to Humble Heart Horsemanship. I'm Sabryna and today you will be joining me on a journey, an adventure that happened about a year and a half ago when my mom and I moved our entire lives from Oregon to northeastern Wyoming. We did a cross-country move because we purchased a ranch in the summer of 2021 and I was so overjoyed. This was a dream that I had since I was a little girl, but along with that included not only moving ourselves and all of our stuff, which we somehow miraculously fit into only 2 trailers and a car, but it also included moving my 2 horses. My 2 horses are Gunner and Gemini. Gunner is my retired senior paint gelding, and Gemini is my young appendix gelding. And I don't know about you, but before we did this cross-country move, I had never, ever trailered my horses more than like a 2-hour drive. So the whole concept of moving them across the country, especially during the hottest time of the year, which can cause a lot of stress for the horses, was incredibly overwhelming. And now that I look back on that, there's just so much insight and wisdom that I have of things that I can recommend people to do differently, or just little pieces of advice and things you can take to make your process of moving your horses easier. Now this applies to if you are moving your horse maybe a few hours from you in the same state, maybe out of state, maybe even out of the country. These are things that you can do that's going to make the process a lot less stressful for you and your horses, because moving can just really be a lot at times. My first recommendation is when you are planning out that route of how you're going to get to the new location is to make sure that you are picking resting stops and overnight stays that accommodate not only your horse, but also you. And if you've ever been on a long distance road trip, you would know that there is a lot of general fatigue, both in your body and in your mind, that can happen. Driving and sitting for that long of a time can be really annoying and stressful, and it can be just very cumbersome to have to deal with dropping your horse off at a horse overnight hotel or a barn, getting them all settled in, and then having to then drive to your hotel or your Airbnb to spend the night. It save a lot of time. It's a lot more efficient and less stressful if you just make sure that you are picking resting stops and accommodations that accommodate you and your horse kind of at the same place. For us, about a month prior to our permanent move, we drove from Oregon to Wyoming to sign on our house and do all that kind of stuff that comes with purchasing a new home. And we had stayed at an Airbnb in a place called Avon, Montana, which was our halfway stop. And this was a really beautiful Airbnb. It was like a studio kind of attached to a garage, and it was on this ranch, and they had some livestock and stuff. And I remember when we pulled up, I was like, oh my gosh, there is a little corral that's like not even 60 feet away from the front door of the Airbnb. There wasn't any animals in it, and I was like, that would be a perfect place to keep my horses overnight for when we make the big actual move. So I didn't really ask him, but I told my mom about it. And so she actually ended up going out when she saw the guy in the parking lot, and she briefly told him our situation and just asked if it would be okay if we could have our horses stay in the corral overnight. The guy was like, absolutely, yes. And that's why it's always a good thing to remember. It never hurts to ask. And I was so grateful that my mom asked the guy that, because he was like, oh yeah, like no problem at all. We enjoy having horses here. So then that made things so much easier, and I was really excited. The guy didn't even end up charging me. Like, I was trying to pay him extra to let them stay the night, and he was like, don't worry about it. He set the whole space up for them even better, even though it was great already, for when we made our final move through and when we stopped there. So that was perfect. So do some research about a good place to stay. Make sure you plan that ahead and try to make sure it's a place that both you and your horse can be accommodated. Now this next one is one that some people kind of forget about, and it's really important to not overlook. And especially if you're moving out of the state, you're going to have a Coggins anyways, which is like your horse's health certificate that basically states that they're free of any infectious diseases. But you need to get your horses up to date on all their stuff, okay? And that includes getting their teeth floated, that includes vaccines, as well as a hoof trim. And I say this because When you move, especially cross country, so much stress is there, and you will be running around like a chicken with its head cut off, and you're going to forget things. And even once you move into your new home, there's a lot to be done. You got to move in, you got to get everything set up. It's a whole thing, especially with horses. So if you can just get all of your horses up to date on everything before you leave, it's going to be a lot more efficient, and you won't really have to think about it while you're dealing with the craziness of moving into a new place. Also, be sure to schedule your horse's vet appointment, especially for that Coggins, pretty early out. Like once you know that you're going to move, schedule it, because some vets, like where I lived in the Portland metro area, they would like book out with appointments really fast. So I made sure to get their appointment to get their Coggins really early on. So I just had that all set up. Number 3 is to make sure that your property is fully equipped for your horse's arrival. And this includes things like having proper, safe horse fencing. It includes having a trough there, because you gotta make sure your horses have water. And it also includes a shelter of some sort. So our ranch here is a little bit quirky, and I say that because some of the fencing was installed improperly, and just kind of weird like quick fixes went on. The previous owner really did not maintain it. So when we came here to sign for our house, and I did the little walk around looking at everything before I drove home to Oregon, I realized that there was kind of a lot of stuff that still needed to be fixed, worked on before my horses could move in. But moving across the country happened so fast for us, and it kind of happened a little bit unexpectedly, that I did not have the time. I'd also not take the time to fix the things I wanted to fix before my horses moved in, and that created a lot more work for me later on. So a good example of this is the main dry lot with the shelter that my horses were going to live in once we moved here. I had barbed wire, top strand over top of the mesh horse safe fencing. It was a pretty small dry lot, and I was like, oh shoot, I really want to take the time to take that down. But we were only here for like 2 days to sign on our house, and it was just everything happened so fast, I didn't have the time to do that. So that created more work for me later on. So if like you have the opportunity to visit your new property or your new home or your new boarding facility, do make sure you have all that stuff set in place if you can. And if you can not do it yourself, you could always hire someone to do it for you before you move in, if you can afford that. 4 is to have hay delivered or already at your new location. So here in the West, especially in summer of 2021, they were going through quite a severe drought. And I had known that a little bit, but I thought, well, even if I have to drive a few hours, I'm sure I'll be able to get hay. And what ended up happening was I ended up having to order hay and have it delivered, and it actually arrived a lot later than what I had anticipated from the hay supplier. So I was like getting pretty stressed, because once we had moved here, I only had brought so many bales with me on my trailer from Oregon for the horses to eat, and that was pretty stressful to have to communicate a lot with the hay supplier. The hay got delayed, so it's better to get all that stuff figured out ahead of time if you can. Have at least a few months, maybe 1 to 3 months of hay already at your new location, so when you move your horse in, you won't have to worry about making sure they have adequate forage. So number 5 is one that I really wish I would have thought of before we took the journey of moving here, and that is to put like your horses, all their hay that they'll need in a day, into individual hay bags for the journey, and the grain or supplements that you feed them into individual Ziploc bags. Because when you are moving in that trailer and you're making stops, and you're trying to make sure you are being cared for as well as your horses, it can be really cumbersome to have to pull out bags of feed and scoop the correct amount and weigh your horse's feed before you give it to them and put it in the hay bags. But if you have all that done and organized beforehand, that journey is going to be so much easier when it comes to feeding. 6 is one that a lot of people don't discuss, but it is the fact that when you trailer your horses, especially long distances, it can be very stressful on their bodies. They use up a lot of calories. They have to really concentrate on putting their weight in certain places and staying balanced for the trailer ride. And so with that, your horse is using up a lot of calories, and they're going to need adequate nutrition to keep them at a healthy weight. So a good thing that you can do before you move your horse is to try to put a little bit of some weight on them. Now, of course, you need to always discuss increasing your horse's feed with your vet beforehand, or even if this is a good idea for your horse, because it depends on your horse as well. But having your horse gain a little bit of some weight before you move is good, because some horses tend to lose weight when they get trailered long distance. They use up a lot of calories. You got to be feeding them properly. My horses, actually, before we moved them, they were a little bit on the thinner side for various reasons. And when we took the long journey here, they ended up losing a pretty significant amount of weight. And so I was communicating with my vet back in Oregon about what to change in terms of their nutritional requirements, and I was really advised through that, so that was helpful. But I was shocked to see how much weight they had actually lost just from the stress of being trailered. Number 7 is to secure a good vet and farrier before you move. I'm so grateful that we have social media, because what I did before we moved out here is I just went on Facebook and read a lot of reviews and went on some horse forums for my new local area, and just learned a little bit about the pricing, the background of the different farriers, what their availability was, and just checked out their reviews. And I was able to already have a farrier set up for when I moved here, and then I did the same with a vet. And that's really important, because you never know, like the whole process of trailering horses long distance is so stressful on the horses that and the people, once you get to your new location, you never know if your horse may injure themselves, or maybe you need some advice about feeding your horse the proper nutrition. Maybe they lost some weight like my horses did with the trailering journey. And so it's just good to already have those established. Number 8 is one that a lot of people don't talk about. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard anyone really talk about this, but it is the importance of purchasing horse supply items that you may not be able to find at your new location. So for me, I moved from a city that had a population of millions of people to the least populated state in the United States, Wyoming. There is not many people here, and although we are pretty close to a town that is one of Wyoming's biggest towns in the whole state, there are not a lot of options for purchasing used tack, sometimes specific feeds that I'm looking for, sometimes specific treats that I'm looking for. So, if you know that ahead of time, or maybe you don't, do some research about your area and see if you'll be able to purchase the type of feed that your horses need. If you're in the need of a used saddle or some used tack, get that beforehand before you move out, especially if it's a place that's really rural and you may have difficulty finding those items. We recently had to drive about a little bit over an hour away to do a trade for my old roping saddle for a new saddle, and it took me about a year to find a used saddle that I was looking for. Number 9 relates to your horse trailer. Now, this is me assuming that you're using like your own trailer or friends or family members' trailer to move your horses to your new place. It is really important to do a full trailer inspection before you get those horses in that trailer and you move. Make sure that you have unexpired tags on that horse trailer license plate. Make sure the wood floor is in good condition. Check your tires. Make sure you have a spare tire. Make sure your lights work. All that kind of general stuff that people do when they do a trailer inspection. You can either have someone who's educated do it for you, do it yourself if you know how to, or take it to like a dealership and have it done. That's going to give you peace of mind. So if you're taking the long journey, if you break down or something, you won't be just kicking yourself later going, gosh, why didn't I think of inspecting my trailer before I moved across the country? Also, a ton of people don't know that if you have insurance for your truck, your car, whatever you're using to pull your trailer with, in most cases, your horse trailer is not actually insured just because your vehicle is insured. So usually you have to get separate horse trailer or trailer insurance. I was really glad that I had insured my horse trailer before we moved. what had happened was our mom was warning us the whole journey. She's like, you guys need to check the air in your tires because we're going through different, terrain and different elevation heights. And we really didn't. Like, we didn't really think it was that important, apparently, which doesn't make any sense now, but we were just flying by the seat of our pants. And sure enough, conveniently, when my sister was in Sheridan, one of the tires on the horse trailer popped. She was able to pull into a Tractor Supply. I called Progressive. They came a few hours later. It was a whole story. But anyways, I was so glad that I had insured my horse trailer. So definitely insure your horse trailer if you can. 10 is to bring electrolytes for your horse's water to add into their water. Now, Gunner, who's my retired paint horse, he's always been a really big water drinker. Like, this horse will drink water anywhere. He's not like really picky about like the water source, or he doesn't not drink when he's traveling. Gemini, on the other hand, my appendix gelding, he's kind of picky, and he's kind of picky with food and stuff too. But many times when I had stopped and offered him water, he did not want to drink the water. And so sometimes putting things that taste good in the water, or putting electrolyte in the horse's water when they do drink, is really good to keep them hydrated, because especially in the summer months, they can get dehydrated really fast when traveling. So have a water source and bring electrolytes. Number 10 is to understand that when you trailer your horse long distance, it is like your horse completing a marathon for their bodies. It's very, very stressful for them, and you need to give your horse adequate resting time, a resting period, before you start working them again, or start really changing things up with them, because similar to if you just ran a marathon, you're going to need to have some rest days for your body, for your muscles to recuperate. The horses need it as well. So give your horse as much time as your vet advises. I actually didn't do any groundwork or any riding with my horses for a whole month after we moved here. Well, hey you guys, I hope that this video has helped you, given you some insight on things that you can do differently if you are moving your horse. And I wish you the best of luck in moving. It is very stressful and very overwhelming, but also very exciting. And oftentimes when we're moving, we are moving our horses to a new place, a better home, better location for you and the horse. So I wish you guys the most peaceful, uneventful moving journey, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!